Alrighty, so in week 6, I want to take just a moment to go back to week 5 attendance because the discussion was so good. And I so appreciated everybody's comments because nobody knows. Here's the reality of how AI is going to affect so many parts of our world, our culture, and of course the profession that we are all studying right now. It may not be your ultimate profession, but something is in your career path that this is going to add to. And so his comments about that, we're not helping ourselves by using AI, is really a balance of that. And I don't need to go over all the reasons why. I think the post last week said it well. The thing I would just add to that conversation, if I was to try to add that, is that the problem solving ability will serve you no matter what you do. Okay. I mean, it is just something that I have found in my life that has helped me have kind of a not kind of but a more structured way to approach things no matter what they are. So the more I can analyze something and break it into parts and look at those to kind of piece together a solution, it's helped. I just think there are other reasons for that. But I also think that relying on AI or using AI to help you grow, of course, that's a good thing. And you have to figure out what that line is for, where that line is at. Now, for this class, I've set the expectation of not expectation, but there's a technical interview. So, of course, that's the reason here you're doing it. In the larger world, when you're out there, let's say you did get a junior developer position, right? I mean, they're going to want you to know how to code and how to use AI. That's just the reality, and finding that balance will be important. But I also wanted to follow up on a couple of things because I saw a couple of you ask about what is FizzBuzz. So it's an actual coding challenge, and it's a used to be a kind of a common years back to where maybe in a technical interview somebody might say, "Hey, code this." So I gave you a link if you want to go check it out. And then Linus Torvalds, the guy who created Linux, rants a lot about code base and the quality of coding. So that's what that reference was for. And the AWS error was really about, and he talked about it in there. And by the way, if you search AWS error code, you'll see a lot of stuff about people frustrated about AWS. But in that case, he was talking about the idea that if AI goes down, they couldn't troubleshoot the errors. And that leads to the other thing about last week. I just want you to know this, I did not set up that code to be a challenge with the div, right? And yet it seems to kind of made the point about learning to code and this idea of troubleshooting, because in order to troubleshoot that, right? It's like having an understanding of why, when you tried to append child, it wouldn't have done it. And actually, in the code challenge I'm going to give you today, I ran into the same thing. I had in my VS Code 2 index files open, and I was coding one, but in my output, that's not what was running. So it took me a few minutes to figure it out. But again, and the idea is not to frustrate you for a long period of time, but is to help you see, oh, you know what, when I get these kind of errors, that's what that indicates. So I'm just saying, okay. I did want to say just a word here that, and I may have said it somewhere before, but I just want to kind of bring it back around right now. Some students taking this class are not studying web development. Some are. I think a pretty good number of you are. But in this case, the reason I don't do more HTML and CSS elaborate, meaning more like using Bootstrap or other frameworks, is honestly because that adds to the complexity of what we're doing. And those skills come other places in the web developer course. So just FYI, if you're wondering. But this week, I do actually add a little CSS to my page because I get tired of looking at it. Just FYI. The other thing is, and you're gonna start seeing my comments about this, is really important that you use some kind of code formatting so that your code is consistent. Let me just move over real quick. So in this case, when I'm looking at my code, right, and this is kind of large, so it might be hard to see, but you should not have code in a function that is right up against it. And now why right up against the margin, right? Or in this case, the starting line. And why would that be? Because in this case, formatting it helps it make it more readable, and I read your code. So, but it's not just me reading it, it's also because the indentation, by the way, if you're taking Python, indentation becomes way important. But for JavaScript, it is important in the sense that somebody's going to read your code, and I'm that somebody, and maybe somebody else in a code discussion would read it as well. So, like make an effort. Now, by the way, there's ways to do this. Like you could there's a plugin called Prettier if you haven't heard of that. Otherwise, I just go in and I can tell it what I want it to format it with, right? Or I can just say format that selection, and then it'll give me options. And then Prettier is an extension that you could use. But in general, I would say use something, and VS Code has it built in, so you can do that as well. So just know that I'm going to start taking off a few points if your code's not formatted well. Okay, so this week we get to do forms and we get to render HTML a little more sophisticated than we've been doing it. I was looking at the task this week that you're going to do. So we're going to learn forms, right? So right now we're calling the start and we're passing it. Actually, in that case, we've changed it. Actually, now we're calling functions out of the start. We're not passing. Actually, no, we are still passing. That's right. We are still passing input into it. So that really becomes your form when we get to that. And this is kind of where most students would have liked to have started, I think. And when they see that, it's like, oh yeah, now this makes it more real because for JavaScript, right, we've spent the last 6 weeks, 5 weeks, coming into six, now we're going to change it, is really just doing things manually, right? We're looping over, which is great, but we're passing values versus getting input from the user. So, of course, this is a big transitional week for us. And then, like I said, updating the way we're outputting, and then I'll have you add something to um, the output for the carbon footprint. Okay. All right. So coming back here. So the thing I have in attendance is I've decided not to do a new video for the starting code, but you need to make sure you have the correct starting code. So you set up your week 6 folder. If you needed help, here's the video to walk you through it. I don't think I did much coding, but I did set up the color difference with a little bit of CSS. If you want to look at that, Allison's been doing a great job of making her output look nice. So it doesn't hurt to spend a little time there as well. Okay, so that's just the topics for this week. And what I decided to do was the following, right? So here's what I want you to do. I'm going to give you a code challenge because this idea of creating an array of objects and iterating over that array of objects and outputting to the page is a really important skill, and you just can't get enough because all those pieces, right, being able to, how do you set up the array, right, how do you populate the data, there's many different ways to do it. So I'm actually going to give you a challenge and you get to determine how you want to approach it. Okay. And this challenge is and I'm not going to mark off points really but this really is to help you see, because this is not a uncommon thing that a technical, and I'm not saying it will, but components of this definitely could be covered in a technical interview. So this is your chance to kind of go, hey, how well did I get those concepts? And so after I wrote the instructions, I actually went and did it just to kind of play around and see how I could implement it. And I don't have a solution video. If you want to see one from me, cool. It's kind of, I'm happy to do it. So let me know. But here's what you're going to do. In your week 5 public, and now the reason I'm saying do it in your week 5 public repo is that I don't want to change what we're coming into week 6 with, which is why I want you to have your week 6 first set up and then go back to your week 5 and do this work there. Okay. So here's what you're going to do is create an array of movies. Now, by the way, if you want to do some other, you know, array of whatever characters, heroes, Pokemons, as long as it has three, okay, and in this case, key value pairs, right? So we're creating an array. In that array, right, I want to have, did I say three? Oh, if not, I will. Okay, so in this case, I should have said each, yeah, so in the array, whatever you're keeping track of, right, needs, you need three objects in there. And in this case, they also, each object has three key value pairs. And if you do something different besides movies, then come up with something, okay? So, and then, so first create them. Now, there's different ways to create, right? We've learned one way, and we've done it with a push method, but you could also just do object literals, right? And this is something the review has been talking about, but I also, because I looked at the content for week 5, and I did go over this idea of how to, and I showed you how to structure an array of objects, okay? So if you need help, reach out for that as well. So once you know, create your array of objects, however you're going to do it, right, with at least three key values. Remember, these are keys, and then you would have values. Then you loop over the movies and output something like this, right? So this would be maybe an example of the first, or in this case, the 0 index of the title. So then I create a line of content that puts, in this case, template strings used to put the movie, has a rating of, and then the year is in brackets, parentheses. Okay. So you don't have to include the quotes, this just shows that. Okay, and then update the DOM, right, with this content. Now you want to loop over, right? Try to minimize global variables, right? So see if you can do this. Now you take the code base that we did from, I'll show you just my output. And you can put it wherever, as long as it's there, right? So and then first, here's your, so first attempt the challenge, see how well. Because this helps you understand how well you're tracking. And yes, the reviews are intended to do that. The code, every time I give a code challenge in the weekly code alongs. But you just want as many of these challenges to see how well you're tracking the concepts we're covering, okay? And this is just another one. Okay, so now attempt the challenge. Really, just give it your honest attempt. And then reply telling us how you approached this challenge, because there are definitely many ways you could have done this, right? If you need help, right, tell us how long. If you needed help, right, if you needed help somehow. And really, this is really a kind of a checkpoint for you. Like, tell us how long you tried before getting help. Like, how long did you actually give that a try, right? As help is needed. Huh, I don't know what I meant there. Oh, I actually meant in the reply, you could actually tell us if you needed help, right? I'll modify that. And then provide us the URL for week 5. So the URL, remember, this is the one that gives us a website, right? You'll give us that URL here. And again, if you need help, if you went out, but in your post, really what I'm grading you on here for the attendance, right, is 50 points for your post. And, you know, a checkpoint for you to see how well. So 30 points comes from starting habits. So what I will do, again, for week 6 private, because we're taking that code first over into the private repo to start for week 6. And then 50 points for the reply here. But again, do that coding in the week 5 publish, so we don't have it in the week 6 starting code. And then 20 points for replying to one student. So here's what and I'll show you my output. Right, so I ended up having it at the top. It doesn't matter where you have it. And again, if you want to see my solution, I'll tell you what it was. Just ask for it. I'm just not, because it's kind of not the idea. The idea is to see, because you could find some code, but that, again, is not the idea of this coding challenge. Okay, so here we are at week 6. My next job is to actually figure out the weekly review. I should talk about that process I go through to get that. It's kind of an interesting thing, or at least it is for me. All right, have a great week. I'll talk to you soon.